welcome back to Washington Commanders Insider. Today we're talking about OTA standouts, and we're also going to be talking about what Deebo Samuel had to say that has us excited for this upcoming season. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to hit that subscribe button, just like Jayden Daniels is going to be hitting Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel for multiple touchdowns this upcoming season. And so in exchange for hitting that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Washington Commanders. And so make sure that you hit that subscribe, you hit that like button, and you join the Washington Commanders Insider family as we talk nothing but Washington Commanders football daily. And so with that being said, let's go ahead, let's jump into it. And so let's start with OTA standouts. And so if you want to check out this article, you can find it on commanders.com, but it is talking about 3 standout players here. And so let's go ahead and let's jump into the first player that is mentioned, and that is Trey Amos. And so I talked about Trey Amos yesterday, and I talked about that he was definitely a standout from the OTAs here so far because he had an interception and he's looked good in coverage. He's looked good in his drills and things like that. And I think that this is huge because I really do feel like that Trey Amos is going to be really an important piece for the Washington Commanders. And you can definitely tell that his impact is certainly going to be needed, especially if the Washington Commanders are going to shift Mikey Sandra inside and let him play his natural position. That means that more responsibility is going to have to go to Trey Amos and then also to Jonathan Jones. And so I think that Jonathan Jones certainly is a player that could step in and contribute right away. But I think it's huge for the Washington Commanders if they're able to get a big time contribution here from Trey Amos. And so, look, I love to see this early with what we are seeing from Trey Amos. I know it is just, 7-on-7 drills or whatnot, but I just love the fact that, look, the ball skills seem to be there with him getting an interception. He seems to be clearly engaged. He's fit right in with what the Washington Commanders are trying to build with just the culture of the team and just really just taking your lunch pill to work, so to speak. And so I love that Trey Amos has come in and he's definitely putting in the work and he certainly is putting his best foot forward. And so I think he's a player that, look, at the end of the day, after training camp, after preseason, I think he's going to certainly be a player that we're going to look back and say he definitely earned his position to start with this team because I do think he is trending towards that. I know we still have a lot of practices, a lot of football to go until we get to that point, but I do really feel like that he can win on the outside there for the Commanders. And I think it's huge because you add him with Jonathan Jones, you add him also too with Marshawn Lattimore, who you're hoping is going to be healthy, with Mikey Sandra still being able to move back to the inside. And I think that being that good really in the secondary or upgrading your secondary is actually going to help the Washington Commanders as far as getting sacks because now, it's not necessarily the pressure that the Washington Commanders are going to get initially, but you could get a lot of coverage sacks because if your back end is doing great, then you are going to create some natural situations for the players up front there. And so that's why I'm super excited about this because the Washington Commanders, they haven't gone out and got an elite pass rusher, so to speak. I mean, we'll find out what happens with Trey Hendrickson. I mean, that could still be something that materializes in favor for the Washington Commanders. And they could still go out there and get a Jadeveon Clowney or somebody like that off of the free agency list. And who knows what's going to happen with teams who are going to have to cut some players due to the salary cap stuff. And so for right now, with what the Washington Commanders have in the building, I think that the secondary definitely getting better is going to help the Washington Commanders as far as getting sacks and pressures that way because they're going to help, I think, generate some coverage sacks for this team. And so the next player that is listed within that article is Mikey Sandra. And so Mikey Sandra talking about just how he looked with his quickness. It seems to be his knowledge. You could see just understanding the defensive schemes and things like that when we're talking about the knowledge. But one of the things that's listed here is that I guess he had a very nice play against Jalen Lane there, being able to kind of swat the ball away at the last second and calls an incompletion, but really looking very good throughout the practice. And so, look, I think that is huge, because when you're talking about Mikey Sandra still coming back in year 2, I think that his importance is right there with Jayden Daniels, because look, he's on the same timeline, as Jayden Daniels. He's a player that you're looking to build with. And so Mikey Sandra has already shown that he's a player that immediately his skills translated from Michigan over to the Commanders. I think that this more and more is becoming really a steal for the Commanders with what he was able to do, because if you look at the fact that he was able to play outside and play that well his rookie season, you can imagine what's going to happen if Trey Amos is able to translate immediately like this. And then you get Mikey Sainristil, who is comfortable in this defensive scheme. He understands, from a pro standpoint, the speed of the game, understanding what offenses are trying to do, and you're putting him back in his natural position. Like, I think that he's set to take a major leap as well. I don't think too many people are talking about that. And once again, the secondary getting better for the Washington Commanders can only help the front of the Washington Commanders defense. I really do think that. And look, defense, you need to have both halves of the defense come together. And so I think clearly when you get stronger on your back end, it's going to help you on the front end. We haven't necessarily talked too much about the additions here, but I think that this is why the Washington Commanders are going to be just fine here moving into this season, even though they have not really added an elite pass rusher here. But you love to see this from Mikey Sandra. I think that, yes, he is definitely becoming a young leader for this team. And so it's great to see that he's off to a great start. And so lastly, the last player that is mentioned here as far as having a standout so far was Jayden Daniels. And it wasn't because he's out there throwing a whole bunch of touchdowns or anything like that. But I do agree with what was said here once again in that article, talking about just really the confidence, and just kind of going back to what I talked about yesterday. And here's the exact quote where he says, look, I got to go out there and prove myself each and every day, no matter if it was last season, this season, 10, 20 years down the road. You have to prove yourself each and every season. And that's what Jayden Daniels said. And so, look, it's that accountability. It's that type of focus. And it's him coming out from day one saying these things. It is really a standout for you, because there's so much talk around Jayden Daniels, and can he take the step in year 2, and comparing him to CJ Stroud and other quarterbacks who really, they started off well, and then, or they had a good season their first year, and then the next season it wasn't as good. I really do like what I'm hearing from Jayden Daniels, and the focus is there. And I think that he knows what's coming with the primetime games, with more film, on this offense, with people geared to really try to stop Jayden Daniels. I think we're going to see something special from Jayden Daniels, and I do think he's going to take the step forward. I love how he's come out with his approach. It seems like his work ethic is the same as it was a season ago, if not more. A lot of people are talking about him as far as his physique, and did he maybe bulk up a little bit? That is something that you love to see with your young quarterback, that, look, he is putting in the work. And so I love this about Jayden Daniels. I do think that it is a standout for me, because your leader of your football team is disengaged. And I think naturally the entire football team is going to follow. And it seems to be that is what's happening here with the Washington Commanders, because you have a lot of veterans here that didn't have to come to these OTAs and then these voluntary workouts and things like that, but they have come, they've been engaged. And I think that this is really how this team continues to build on the foundation here that has been set from the top all the way down to the bottom. And so those are your 3 standouts. And once again, if you want to read this, it's just a paragraph on each player that I just talked about, but this is on commanders.com. And so next, I wanted to talk about what Deebo Samuel had to say here quickly. And so if you go over here to Rigo's Rag, you can find this. And so this is a 2-minute clip, and it's on NBC4 Sports. And it's him talking about Jayden Daniels,